And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to another new episode of Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guest, Kelly. Kelly's a fellow Hoosier. She's had several different experiences throughout her lifetime that's kind of led her to where she's at today. Kind of got connected a while back and got things scheduled to come on here, talk a little bit about what she's experienced. But before we bring Kelly on, if you've ever had an experience or a story you'd like to share, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to the website, tinfoiltales.com, and go up to the contact section. Either way works. We'll get your message sent to me, and then we'll get something scheduled for a future episode. Even if you don't want to be an actual guest on the show, but you have a story you'd like to share, you can send it to me. I'm thinking about collecting those and maybe having a section set up on the website for experiences submitted. The idea I've been kicking around. We'll see how that goes. If you'd like to help the podcast out, please continue to share it. Whether you're listening to it on Apple, Spotify, any of those podcatchers, or if you're watching on YouTube, listen along on there. Wherever it is you listen to Tinfoil Tales at, please continue to share it. That word of mouth is what helps keeping this podcast to expand the way it is. I truly appreciate everyone out there doing that. Without you guys doing that, the podcast wouldn't be where it is today. If you'd also like to help the podcast, you can become a member of the Patreon. There are 2 different tiers. There's the free tier and then the paid tier. The paid tier is only $1.99 a month, but you get access to all of the episodes right after they're recorded. They're all ad-free. You also get access to all the live videos that I record. And then both memberships get access to Crinkle Conspiracies, the podcast I'm doing with Ed Corella, exclusively on the Patreon. Make sure to follow me on all the social medias. Look for Brandon Tinfoil Tales on Facebook. That is one of the best ways to interact with me. I'm more interactive on Facebook than I am anywhere else. There is a merch store now available. You can find more information about that in the show notes. And finally, to wrap this up, I will be appearing at 4 different events come September and October. The first one will be September 14th at the Bigfoot and Brews Spirits Too in Dowagiac, Michigan at Sister Lakes Brewing Company. I'll also be at the first annual Indiana Bigfoot Conference September 27th and 28th down in Nashville, Indiana. Both of those events require tickets. There is a link in the show notes that'll get you to the place where you can purchase the tickets for that. In October, I'll be at ParaUnity 6 at the Miami County 4-H Fairgrounds here in Miami County, Indiana. That's on October 19th. And then on October 26th, I will be in Crawfordsville, Indiana for the first annual Crawfordsville Paranormal Convention. The 2 events in October, I will also be a guest speaker at. So if you want to come out and listen to me talk, be your opportunity to do so. But at all the events, I'll have a vendor booth set up. I'll have some goodies for you guys. I'll even have my recording rig. So anyone interested in stopping by and talking with me, that'd be your chance to do so. But now it's time to bring Kelly on. Hear about some of the weird things she's encountered here in my local state. Hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take the time to welcome my guest tonight, Kelly. Thanks for coming on here and talking to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
We've chit-chatted a little bit back and forth for about a month or so, and I've been booked out for so long that it takes a little bit to get on here, but definitely glad to have you on.
Yeah, glad to be here. I know scheduling is tough. I totally get it.
You have your own show too, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel called Beacon News, and several Facebook groups. One for spiritual growth, one for the crypto stuff, and then I have another one for alien abduction. because I actually have experience in all of the above.
It's it is interesting, and I've admitted to before that I've always been somewhat skeptical when people say they've had all these different experiences, but the more I've gotten into it, I think they're all somehow interconnected anyway, so I'm not as skeptical against it as I used to be.
Right, right. I mean, I was the same way, um I've always known that I was clairvoyant and, could see dead people, talk to dead people and things like that. And then when I got a little bit older, um, my uncles and my brothers were big hunters and they had their whole Bigfoot experiences and stuff. And of course, I was witness to a lot of that. And then probably by the time I was 7 or 8 was my first alien encounter. And for the longest time, those were just three different things about my life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't see a connection. I didn't think there was a connection to any of it. But now I'm in my early 50s, and in the research that I've done in the last 23 years, I also was an investigator for MUFON for several years because of my extreme UFO encounters. I became a field agent. And so for 23 years now, I've been studying this. And the more that I've learned, and I still learn every single day, but the more I've learned, the more I've realized that it really is all interconnected. And I'll be honest with you, I walked into the NSA's website and just waltzed right into their alien vault one time. It was public knowledge, early 2000s. I guess they didn't think people were ballsy enough to do that then, and I was. And I mean, I paid a lot of hell for it, but still, I saw the list. They had, at that time, a list of 57 known species. And Bigfoot was one of those species on the list, and it really ticked me off. It really, really aggravated me because I still just could not wrap my mind around that part of the whole Bigfoot thing, right? I knew that people saw them near portals and that there were usually, spheres of light or UFO encounters around the same times with other people, but I personally had never experienced that. So I just thought that was maybe a little too woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
And so it really irritated me to see that on their list. And then, of course, the Mars rover video was leaked that had the Bigfoot-looking man on the cliff. I don't know if you know about that or remember that.
It sounds
Back
familiar,
around
but I don't.
it's around 2006, I think, that happened. And of course, they pulled it right away. But ever since then, I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to the whole Bigfoot's on that list thing. And, since then, I also have a group, a research group where we go out and do research in the field for not just Bigfoot, but paranormal stuff. We're actually kind of on a mission to meld it all together now and to show people that it is all connected. And that likely these Bigfoots are some type of hominid, some type of human, if you will. And that they are very closely working with some type of alien agenda, whether you want to call that intervention or just an agenda. That's, your opinion. I'm not here to persuade anybody of their beliefs.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating to me now how interconnected it all is. And all three aspects have been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, which is really strange. So let me just start by saying I am a psychic medium professionally, and I have a spiritual business online where I help people to seek clarity and speak to their past loved ones if necessary to find that clarity that they need and that closure. And then I also go out in the field and do paranormal work where we help to send the souls that are willing to the light and free them from their tether that they are bound to here, because every ghost that's on the earthly plane has some type of tether that was created to keep them here. And then we also go in the field and do Bigfoot research and stuff like that, as I said before. So if anybody's interested in that, I'm sure you'll have details in your description or whatever and they can get a hold of me for that. But when we were little, this is where it all began for me. When we were really little, growing up in Arkansas, we were in a very rural area. And as I said, my uncles and my brothers were all very avid hunters, and they were out hunting and would come home mad, telling stories about how Bigfoot had tracked their deer and took their deer before they could get to it. And I'm like, what? No way. You know, if anything, these creatures are probably herbivores is what I thought. They were herbivores, right? They're totally harmless. They don't want to hurt anybody. They don't want to eat our meat. I've learned a lot since then, needless to say. But my uncles had gotten this notion that they would set bear traps to catch one, to prove to other people that they do exist and they are taking their deer when they're hunting them. And I happened to be privileged enough to be staying the night at their house the night that the bear trap went off. And it was the most horrendous, frightening scream I have ever heard to this very day in my life. It was a blood-curdling scream. And of course, all of my uncles and my brothers were there waiting with their guns, and they jumped up, and they're all, you know, the noise was such a loud, scary noise that even these men with their guns were scared to go out in the dark to see what it was. They would wait till first light and then go see. And at first light, when they went out, lo and behold, there was no animal in this bear trap. In fact, the bear trap was broke open and laying on the ground in pieces. And that really blew their mind, and mine, of course, because something that strong, I mean, I don't know if you know about bear traps, but they're pretty dang strong.
Yeah, they're pretty thick and heavy duty because obviously they're trying to catch a 600-pound bear or something.
Yeah. And this thing was broke open, and that really rattled my uncles then. So they were pretty hell-bent that they were just going to sit out in the woods at night and shoot at anything that moved to hope to kill them, which really disturbed me because being an empath, I felt their pain, you know. I felt their worry over this. And personally, I can understand why they don't like humans and their weapons. We have a lot of shoot first, ask question leaders kind of mentality too often and things, I think. But anyway, they never did actually get one. We saw plenty of them. They would come out on the road in front of us. They would walk through the woods right near where we were. They were not afraid to show themselves the way that a lot of people will tell that they're so elusive, you know. Mm-hmm. And we never witnessed them going into any portals or becoming transparent where you can't see them or being able to cloak, or we never experienced any of that. But again, maybe they just didn't feel the need for it there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people in Arkansas, it was pretty common knowledge that they exist. Now, when I was a teenager, we moved to Indiana. This is where all of my people are from. And so we moved back to be closer to family. And one of my older brothers had lost his German Shepherd that was like part of the family for all of us. So we're all out in the woods, just right outside of New Salisbury, Indiana, in Harrison County. And we're calling for this dog. And I was about 16 when this happened. And, you know, of course, I've got a couple of brothers. My boyfriend is out there with us. My mother was out there. And I guess some of them were, you know, keeping a close eye on me, being the only girl in the woods. But they noticed before I did that I walked straight up on a juvenile Bigfoot. And I mean, like within 2.5, 3 feet of this thing, right? It's standing up against the tree, and it's got one arm hanging up in the tree, almost ape-like. So I can understand why some people would say that they think they're apish. But its face, I'll never forget its face for as long as I live, because I was looking at another type of human species that is not supposed to exist. And I was bewildered. I wasn't frightened at all. Like nothing in me said I should be scared. I looked straight in its eyes and it looked straight in my eyes. And the compassion in its eyes, as if it was telling me, I'm sorry about the dog. I don't know if it killed the dog and ate it, or if it was just, felt my sorrow and my desperation to find the dog and, could hear that in my voice. I don't know why it was looking at me so compassionately, but it was looking at me very compassionately.
Yeah.
And it changed my whole world. It changed everything I ever thought about it. Because as a kid, that was scary to hear them in the woods so near the houses and the trailer. My aunt lived in a little bitty 70s style trailer. I mean, it literally could have came straight through that thing at us. Us kids were scared, to hear it. But this changed everything for me. And I think I've been on a quest ever since then to prove that they are some type of human. Because this looked more like, to me, what we would think of as a caveman or a Neanderthal. This did not look like some swamp ape or large gorilla type creature, This was some type of man.
Did it look more like, you said look more like a man? It had more like the humanoid like nose, and have the more wider nose and bigger mouth, like describes in a lot of the Sasquatch sightings.
Its nose was wider than mine is, or wider than, let's say, the average Caucasian person. Now, my dad had a really big nose, a really wide nose, so it didn't look that much different than my own dad's, And it didn't really have a whole lot of facial hair. It had almost like chops coming down the sides, toward the cheekbones. And of course, the top of its head, it had quite a bit of hair, but it wasn't fur. It was like full on hair. And he was very much hairy on his arms and his legs and his torso, He was very hairy. But I didn't look at his body in detail because I was so captured by his eyes, because we made eye contact. So I was really more focused on what his face looked like. But now his hands looked like hands of a man. I saw the hand draped through the tree limb. And again, he was very hairy, but I mean, arguably, we have some very hairy men of our own species,
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be too far of a stretch to think that it would be some kind of human that lives out there in the woods, and they need that hair, right? Because your hair is not just your protection from weather and such, but it works like antenna, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your hair moves, with the energy in the air that lets you know what's going on. So that would be a very good built-in defense mechanism to have if you lived in the woods, in my opinion. But yeah, ever since then, I've just been on this quest to prove somehow that they were some type of human species. But, of course, at 16, I didn't know how I was ever going to do that. And I read all the books and I watched all the shows, and the shows really, for me, are just lackluster. The whole knocking on trees and doing the different things out there, because in my opinion, the tree knocks and the structures that they're building out there, that's not for our benefit or for us to use, to try to communicate with them. Those are things for their benefit, to let, much like the Native Americans used to do. I don't know if you're familiar with the way Native Americans used to do things when they were able to live free across the land, but they would do certain tree structure signals that means, you can find food here, or there's water here, or hey, this is my territory where my family is. It was different meanings like that for things. And I think that the forest people, the Sasquatch people, are using it much the same way. Now some of it could definitely be to say, keep away from here. But and like the calls are for them to communicate with each other and to let someone know that there's somebody around. So for us to be out there doing that, is kind of ridiculous because we're just telling them, hey, I'm over here and I'm somebody looking for you, you know?
I never understood
So,
why people do that. Like,
yeah.
when someone goes out looking for these things, they make a call. These things are going to know that you're not them.
Right?
Like, and if they're really that elusive to where they don't want people to see them, all you're doing is like, hey, we're over here. Don't bother coming this way.
Exactly. And so when my group goes out looking for them, we're not actually, I mean, we go to spots that we know that they're present in from seeing tree structures and footprints and things like that. But what we will do is we will sit down in our circle around our fire or whatever, and we will just chill and be us and let Bigfoot come to us. And that works so much better than going out in the woods in their territory and, you know, making them want to play hide and seek. Because they do come in. They're curious about us. You know, they want to see what we're doing, especially if you're laughing and giggling and having a good time, or if you're singing. And even with me being spiritual, you know, a lot of times my children and I will go outside in our backyard near the woods and we sing and we dance and we meditate and we say mantras and, you know, different things like that. And we ended up with a whole family of, well, 3 to be exact. Bigfoots that would come up and watch us play and frolic in the yard. They never tried to harm us and never tried to get too close to us or scare us. And a lot of people that I told that to were like, oh, they'll steal your babies. They'll steal women, you know, and maybe sometimes they do. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that this particular family of 3, I would have trusted them with my life. And actually on a couple of occasions, I feel like they protected my life. We had some very large wolf or very large dog in the woods for a whole summer that had footsteps that were a good 3 feet, which is a full yardstick in spacing between them, you know, from one step to the other, which is a pretty good step for a dog or something. And we had a BRFO guy for Indiana come out to the house to investigate and hang out by a bonfire with us for a while to see if Bigfoot showed up. And actually, the werewolf thing or whatever it is showed up instead. And it seemed very threatening to us. It was up in a tree. It was growling. It was howling. Clearly different sounds than what Bigfoot are, you know. And the BFRO, yeah, guy, got so rattled and scared that he actually packed up and left rather than stick around and see what that was. I guess that was above his pay grade. You know, he didn't want to be there for that. But after he left, the rest of us remained around the fire, and we heard all kinds of rustling and stuff in the woods, like a tussle was going on, and then you could hear like a few Bigfoot sounds, and then you could hear like wolf sounds, and to us it sounded like they were scrapping, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, to me this just feels like my Bigfoot's out there protecting us, right? And it ended up, you know, you could hear something being drugged, like it was dragging it away. I don't know what was happening there, but that's what it sounded like for us. Is that one thing was dragging the other thing. But the wolf thing was like yelping and making different noises. And I mean, it definitely went away. So in my opinion, my version of the story is Bigfoot whooped the werewolf thing's ass for us and kept us safe, you know? But they would come up close to the house and I fed them all the time. I gifted them with different foods. I actually experimented with food to see what type of things they really do like. And of course, they love fresh fruits and fresh vegetables, but they also really dig candy bars. They like chocolate, just like we do. And they don't like tuna. Even when I would take tuna out there with like a pop top and half pop it, you know, to show them how it works, they would never touch it. They would leave it behind. So they don't like tuna. They're picky. Who knew that they could be picky? I've left books out there and they've taken the books. So, and I always tested this too. I would always put the food inside of like tackle boxes and toolboxes that have complicated latches, so that just any little animal coming along can't take it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know for sure that it was the Bigfoots that were taking it. And every time the tackle box or the file box, one time I used a file box, would be unlatched properly, things removed, and then the latch put back down on the lid like it was latched back, because we would literally walk up on it and not know if they had even gotten in it and got the food because it would be latched. And we would open it up and it would be completely empty. Okay, so that's clearly intelligence, right?
Something smart that knows how to open up the boxes.
Right, and shut them back. Yeah, after they take all the things. And we never found any kind of trash in the woods from any of it. And we ruled out squatters. We ruled out all kinds of possibilities for what this could be other than Bigfoot. Even though we had already found the prints and we'd already seen plenty of tree structures. And I actually have those on my YouTube channel from, I think it was 2 years ago, something like that, when we first started documenting it at my house, because I hadn't realized that the place I moved to actually had a family of Bigfoot in the woods until then. So that was pretty cool. And that went on, I lived there for almost 4 years. So that went on the whole time that I was there. And, I wished that I could have brought them with me when I had to move. But, realistically, how do you do that, right? Not like you can pack them in the van and take them with you.
Right.
But yeah, they seemed very comforting and very sweet. Now, this new place that I've moved to, also in a rural area, about 30 miles from where I lived prior, there's likely a Bigfoot in these woods too, but it doesn't seem to be so friendly. I'll start by saying we moved into a house that had sat empty for about 8 months. And so there was no activity here at all. And then I get here with my kids and I'm full of life and they're full of life. And so then there was plenty of activity, right? And maybe that's what they didn't like about it. I don't know. Maybe they're just the type of, I was going to say people, the type of Bigfoot that just doesn't like a lot of noise. And so, they're not pleased with us being here. I don't know. But they have taken my 5-gallon paint cans and thrown them up on the hillside and smashed them. Took all the dog food. Anytime we set the dog food outside, they take all the dog food. I have 2 huskies. And I used to leave my bags of dog food outside until that started happening, because they would just take the whole daggone bag, just like help theirself,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my experience with them since I've been here at this place the past 6 months has not been so pleasant. Also in the same area of Harrison County, during broad daylight, I've had 2 visual sightings of a werewolf. And that's honestly something that I had always hoped wasn't real. And, part of me still wishes that it's not real.
I can verify there is something that is very real because I've seen one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a whole different kind of, that's a whole different level of respectful fear right there, because Bigfoot, go ahead.
I was going to say, not to cut you off from what you're saying, but I want to touch base about when you said the Sasquatch was when you just moved in, not like seeming to be happy that you're there. I literally just had an interview with someone on the previous episode, and he was talking to me about, I actually just got an email from the guy a little bit ago. I'm going to speak with him tomorrow. He's from Monroe County, around Bloomington area, and they just bought this place and moved in recently, and no one had lived there for a long time. And now they've seemed to have angered the things that were living around the place. So I'm wondering, because you're kind of down on that.
Yeah.
that area too. So I wonder if it's not something territorial with these things in that general region.
Yeah. And see, that's another thing that I have learned in my research. A lot of these researchers think that they migrate quite often, but I don't feel like they do around here. And really, there's no reason for them to, because we've got the Harrison Crawford Forestry and so many other forestries. I mean, Indiana, the state of Indiana, I don't know if you know, but we have the most forest space out of any state in the United States. Dense forest. And, what do you have in forests? You've got the animals, you've got the running water, you've got fish, you've got berries, like, why would you have to migrate? You could live there all year long and survive. I mean, I could survive in the forest here if I had to. We've got caves that are in the forest and all around. Particularly Harrison County is riddled full of caves, and all of these cave systems are pretty much, well, most of them are unexplored except by, spelunkers and such. So there's ample places for them to live, to hide, to survive without having to migrate. And yeah, I do feel like it's territorial.
Yeah.
And, the ones when I moved to the other location where the three were, I feel like they accepted us because of our energy and our, we were out there singing and dancing and meditating and chanting and doing all these things, that they could see we were very in touch with nature and very in tune spiritually. And that made them accept us. That's my opinion of it. And here, since I've been here in the last 6 months, everything's been so hectic and busy up till this past few weeks that we've not had time to get outside and do those things, and of course the weather too, right? Because when we moved here, winter was just coming on. And so we hadn't really been able to be outside and, I guess, prove ourselves is what I'm trying to get at. We haven't been able to really show this Bigfoot who we are. And all they hear is just the, kids running back and forth and yelling and playing, and me yelling over at my brother that's my neighbor, hey, Rob. Because we're just like, we're country people. We just holler at each other to get each other's attention. We don't use a phone or go knock on doors. We just holler across the yards. So, I mean, that's pretty much all they've gotten from us is just that kind of stuff. And maybe that does seem annoying to them, So,
No,
yeah.
you just mentioned that, and again, it's around Lake Monroe, and I thought you were down not too far from that same area. And when you mentioned that, it just clicked on me, reminded me. I was like, literally just talked to someone earlier, and they were telling me about someone having an issue.
See, we're connecting some dots there.
Yeah. But back to your werewolf. I definitely want to hear about this.
Okay, so like I said, I never wanted to believe in those at all, and never really gave it two thoughts, even in my adult life, knowing about, Bigfoot and aliens and stuff like that. Well, because I'd already thought I figured out the chupacabra thing. I really think that's just misidentification, and it's that Tasmanian tiger that settlers brought here in the 20s and 30s, and then they thought they killed it.
Yeah.
They wiped it out. I think that's all that is. So, most of these quote unquote mythical creatures, right, are cryptids, I just kind of always look for a logical reason, like a lot of people do, to explain, werewolf being at the top of my list because I don't want them to be real. So we're coming home from Louisville back to Harrison County, and we're traveling through this little small town called Georgetown. Broad daylight, 3 p.m., right? Beautiful sunny day. We've got our windows down. We're cruising along. I'm in the passenger side of the car, and I'm just looking out at everybody's pretty yards and landscaping and stuff as we're passing through. And the very last house on the very far edge of town has this little water fountain out in the front, and there was a werewolf I swear to God, a werewolf drinking up on two legs, drinking from this water fountain thing that's in this brick circular, like landscaping deal in their front yard. And I'm just like, what the? I just saw a werewolf. And my husband at the time said, no way, where? And I'm like, right there at that house. So of course he turns around and goes back because he wants to see too. And so he turns around and we go right back and we go past it. And yeah, it's still standing there on two legs, drinking from this water fountain. Right. And we're like, holy crap, that really is, like, its legs are bent the right way. And, its back legs don't bend like our knees do. They bend the opposite direction, like a big wolf or a dog would. But his hands are what struck me when we saw him the second time, because he had one hand on each side of the circular brick thing, whatever you call that, right? That wall that's around the fountain.
I know what you're meaning, yeah.
And his hands looked mannish, right? Like, I say mannish, but they had hair down the tops of them, the backs of them, right? And he had it, to me, from that distance, which was probably 150, 200 yards, it looked like long black fingernails. Like he had painted fingernails, right? And I remember thinking that he looks like he has painted fingernails, and that looks like man hands. And that really rattled me, because then, and like at that point, I'm like, okay, these things really are real. What am I going to do with that knowledge? Like, that's not cool. And that's only 15 miles from where I live that we saw this.
What year did you say this was?
This was in 2016.
Okay.
And it really, really rattled me bad. I was scared to let my kids go outside if it was, if we were in a wooded area. It really scared me bad. It messed with me.
Did it have a tail?
It had a tail, yes. I mean, like traditional, its body looked like a wolf, right?
Mm-hmm.
But its head was shaped like a wolf, but like a morphed man's wolf face, if that even makes sense. Because it looked half man, half wolf in its face. And I don't even know how to really explain that, except to say that its eyes looked human. Bigger than ours, but human. They looked human, right? They looked intelligent, I guess you could say. And it had like a muzzle type nostril area, but still almost mannish looking. And it just messed me up to see this, because I've watched those movies like The Island of Dr. Moreau, things like that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how something like that could really exist. I just don't see how that would be feasible. And then to see it just really rocked my whole world. So then I kind of put it out of my mind after a while. And by 2019, I was living in the country in Elizabeth, Indiana. And I was a smoker, so I would go outside to smoke. And I'm outside on the deck smoking. The first time was in broad daylight. I was out on the deck smoking, and from my neighbor's house across the road in their backyard, it sounded just like that traditional movie type sound of a man transforming into a werewolf, like the bone crackling kind of a sound and the yell. And I'm just thinking, I'm not gonna go straight to this is a werewolf. I'm thinking that the neighbor must be a murderer, right? And he's killing people in his backyard. That's what's happening, because this can't be a werewolf. How crazy is that I would rather think that than to believe it's a werewolf? But that is where my mind wanted to go with it. I'm like, no. This ain't your traditional werewolf transforming. That's not what this is. That's probably some crazy man that lives over there and he's murdering people. That was my rationale.
It would be more plausible, I guess.
I guess. So I go back in and tell everybody in the house what I just heard. And of course, they go out to listen, and it's not doing it anymore because I stood there and listened to the whole thing happening, trying to figure out what I was hearing. So, a couple days go by. I'm out on the deck again smoking. This time it's at night. And one of my older daughters is out there with me, who's old enough to smoke. Just for everybody's knowledge, she was old enough to smoke. We were out there smoking. And we heard that same sound that I heard a few days before that sounded like bone crackling, snapping, breaking apart, man yelling. Like you could just envision it, right? From the sound you're hearing, you can just totally see this picture in your mind of this guy transforming into a werewolf because of these sounds. It sounded so classic to the movies. It was unreal. And I'm like, this can't be real, right? Tell me this is not real. Tell me we're imagining this right now. And she's like, no, Mom, we're hearing this. And she gets her phone out and starts recording it on audio so that we've got the audio proof, which I still have somewhere. So, she's scared. I'm scared. We decided we don't really need that cigarette so much anyway. We put the cigarette out early and we go back in, lock the doors. But of course, we're still smokers. So we're still having to go out day or night if we want a cigarette. And from then on, everybody would always go out in teams. And there were 6 of us that lived here in this house together. But we would always go out in pairs. Nobody ever went out alone anymore after that. So this one night, we actually saw 3 wolves, real wolves, walking down the road, kind of spaced out between each of them as we're standing out there smoking. And we thought that was pretty weird too, because what are the odds that you would see wolves in Indiana? Number one, real wolves. I didn't know that there were any. The closest we had was a coyote, in my opinion. I didn't know. But we clearly saw 3 wolves, and they walked by. And within 10 minutes of them walking past down the road in the woods behind us, we heard this big, scary howl. And those particular 3 wolves actually got their hackles up about it. Like, clearly this other wolf howling thing don't belong with them. And they actually went through the woods very stealthily. I think that's how you say that, stealthily, toward that sound. And I don't know what happened after that. We didn't hear anything else after that except some, limbs breaking, brush kind of noises from the ground. No, we didn't hear no kind of fighting or anything over that one, but they were definitely out there seeing what that was. And it was a clear indicator to us. My point being here, it was a clear indicator to us that this was not just some wolf in the woods that belongs with a pack of wolves. This was some Lone Ranger that they didn't like, because it was visibly clear that they did not like what they heard either. And it actually felt comforting to me. I was like, yeah, go get them, doggy. Go protect us, please, from this thing. Because that's something I don't want anything to do with. And so after we had that series of events, and that went on for an entire summer that I lived there, hearing this thing carrying on out there all hours of the day and night. So I moved from there. I didn't stay there long because that place was creepy. And moved back to northern Harrison County and was telling some people that I know about what we had experienced there. And they said, oh, well, let us tell you, we have seen a werewolf too. And I'm like, really, you have? And they're like, yeah. And they live in Milltown, Indiana, in Crawford County. But they have an A-frame house that's got the big glass windows all up the side of it, And she said, yeah, we were getting ready for bed one night and I was laying in the bed and the husband was in the bathroom brushing his teeth or whatever, getting ready to get in bed. And she said she heard some kind of clawing sound on the glass up near the cathedral ceiling. And she looked up and she could see what looked like claws or something up probably, I don't know how tall their ceilings were, 10 or 12 feet. And it was maybe 3 feet from the ceiling that she was seeing this claw. And she was like, I couldn't understand how something could be reaching that high because there's no nothing to step on outside the house there. And she said, so then I went to look through the glass windows themselves to see what's out there. And she said there was a werewolf standing outside of her bedroom in this great big glass window with his hands outstretched above his head, just pressed up against the glass, looking at her, watching her as she laid in her bed. And of course she screamed, and her husband comes running out, and he sees it, and he yells, and he grabs his shotgun and goes through the house and out the door. And of course, by the time he got out there, this thing had already gotten down on four legs and took off. But, once you see something like that, you don't forget it. That's not something you can ever erase from your mind.
No.
And it forever changes you. Like forever changes you. Especially if it's looking at you in your daggone bed. I would not be cool with that. That would be freaky.
I've heard a lot of different reports about these things, and for the most part, people aren't saying they're werewolves. They refer to them as dogmen. And
yeah, but don't you think that's the same thing?
I lean that way to an extent. I don't necessarily know one way or the other what any of this stuff is, because me being a skeptical type of person, I want to say none of it's real because it doesn't make any sense. But I know what I saw, so I can't say that they're not real because I literally saw a two-legged or an upright walking, look like a black wolf. Like,
and it was walking?
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, scary, but cool.
That whole experience, like I said, I can talk to you off air about it, but that whole experience is why I do what I do. And
I gotcha. Because it changes you, doesn't it?
it makes you really question a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So that's what my fascination when you mentioned werewolf, like, I've always wondered if people depicted as werewolves weren't whatever these creatures are, and I don't know if it's a human transferring into this wolf figure or if they're not something else that just have the ability to do that. But what I saw did not have the stereotypical werewolf features. It didn't have hands with a claw. It literally had like normal animal paws, and everything about it looked like a normal wolf dog thing, but it was able to stand up and walk on two legs like a human, and its front shoulders or its front arms or whatever hung down like a person's would.
Right?
Very strange.
Maybe there is something different about a dogman than a werewolf.
But most
I
people
just always assumed it's the same thing.
Most people say that when they see these things, they have all these humanoid features, and what I saw did not have that.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Yeah, and I actually know a lady that she says the same thing. She's like, no, it looked straight up like a dog. It just walks on its hind legs, and it's much larger than a dog. I mean, she calls them dogman too, and she's absolutely convinced it has no humanoid features. It looks just like a daggone dog. Just walks upright.
I'm drawing a blank. I don't remember if someone, and this sounds bad if it was on my own show, but I remembered hearing something recently, and it may have been someone else's show, but someone had said that they had seen a dog walking around their vehicles on their hind legs, and they thought it was strange because they didn't know what it could have possibly been, and every time they looked at it, it looked like just a normal dog walking on its back legs, like it wasn't no big deal. I was like, that's weird.
Oh, that is weird.
So I don't remember like if they just described it as like a wolf looking dog or like the German Shepherd style or whatever, but I remember that someone saying they'd seen a dog walking between vehicles and it was walking on its hind legs.
Do you know much about skinwalkers?
I know it's more of a Navajo thing. A lot of people throw that term around out in here and stuff, but it originated over out west when the whole Navajo tribe type thing, like their medicine men and their lore to it.
Yeah, well,
I think
to me, a true Wendigo or a true rake or skinwalker, which are all the same thing, just different words, is this creepy white thing that basically looks like a humanoid figure that can take the shape. It can transform and take the shape of other things, like a shapeshifter, right?
Mhm.
And I personally would have never believed that this is a real thing. I too would have, and did always, think that there's got to be some kind of logical explanation behind that. But I know that people have said, you know, if a goat is walking up on its hind legs, that it could be a skinwalker that took possession of the goat. So that's what I was getting to with that dog, the normal dog walking upright. Maybe that was a skinwalker type of, you know, body snatcher thing going on. And I actually do believe that that is a real thing at this point, and actually just became a believer literally 4 days ago. Literally 4 days ago. Because to my knowledge, nobody around here's ever seen anything like that, other than maybe in haunted houses sometimes or something. They might claim to see one.
No.
But as I said, my brother lives next door, and I was actually walking over to his house to take his cell phone back to him, because he had left it here after he had dinner, and it was dark outside. And I just waltzed out the door with his cell phone in my hand. No big deal. No flashlight, no gun, no nothing, you know. Started over there, got halfway there, and I stopped dead in my tracks because first I thought I saw a great big white dog with like big brown patches on it. That's what I thought I saw first. And, you know, like the size of what are them the big dogs with the barrel around their neck? Is that a
Saint Bernard.
Yeah. I thought it was like a big Saint Bernard or something. Of course, nobody in my neighborhood has such a dog, but that's what I thought I was looking at. And so I paused. Like I saw the full length of its body. It was actually not facing toward me. It looked like it was walking, you know, like from right to left of the direction I was facing. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And when I looked again really hard, because I mean, it's dark, there's no outside lights on or anything. It was just moonlight. When I looked again, the second time I looked real hard, it looked like a damn rake. I mean, it looked like a humanoid creature down on, like squat down on all fours, looking toward me, but still walking the same direction, just down on all fours, you know. Very long front arms, very weird shaped curve to its back. And even in that moment, I'm like, nah, that's not what I'm seeing, but I ain't sticking around to make sure. Right? So I turned around, I came back in the house, got my flashlight, got my gun, and went back out again because I'm still going to take my brother his cell phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a country girl. I'm not scared of a whole lot of things. As long as I got a weapon on me, I'm usually cool. So I go back, and my cousin is my roommate, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I saw a creature or something out there, so I'm just going to be safe, you know, heading across the path. And normally she wouldn't even get up and come out behind me. She would just sit here and do her own thing, right? But for whatever reason, she decided she needed to come out there too. And I didn't know she'd walked out the door right behind me, but she stepped out on the porch and was watching. And I get about halfway across the yard, and she says, wait, stop. I thought I just saw a big dog. And I said, do what? And she described the exact same kind of dog that I thought I saw at first. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not going over there. I was like, forget about it. Now I'm a believer. Skinwalkers could probably be real.
Yeah.
Now I'm a believer because she thought she saw the same thing I saw. And I like, I'm not on drugs. I'm not drunk, you know, like there's no reason for me to hallucinate. So whatever I saw was not natural, and I can't explain it. And so now they're on the top of my list with werewolves of things I wish didn't really exist.
There's probably a lot of things out there that exist that we don't really know about and we don't want to know about, to be honest.
True. And I'm hoping most of those stay off of my list.
I've always been skeptical on a lot of things, but since I've been doing this show and the more people I've talked to and the more things I've looked into and just from my own personal experiences with stuff, it is very hard to try and remain skeptical and yet keep an open mind, because before, years ago, I never had an experience or anything like that. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But if someone were to tell me some of the stuff that people tell me today, back then I'd be like, these people are crazy. Now I'm not that way. I'm just like, yeah, probably true. Because
Yep.
at this rate, like, who am I to tell someone that whatever they've experienced isn't right or real or whatever, because my own stuff doesn't make any sense to me. So how can I tell somebody else that they're wrong?
Right.
So that's one of my biggest pet peeves I have, is when people want to argue with someone else because someone's telling you their experiences, whether I believe it or not, or whether someone else believes it or not, that's up to them. It's not my job here to prove or disprove anyone. But when people get upset and they want to start arguing with people about, well, this can't be real, this isn't true, I was like, were you guys there? Like,
Right.
it might sound crazy to the normal person, but if you're not there to witness it, how are you going to tell someone that what they experience isn't true?
Right.
I don't know. One of my pet peeves, I guess, anymore is I see comments and I hear things from others, and it's just like, whatever. I try and tone out the negativity.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, really, who are we to judge? You know, we don't know for sure. And it's not fair, honestly. Knowing about Bigfoot and the ridicule that people get for believing in Bigfoot and knowing about Bigfoot is not fair, right?
Yeah.
There are some very credible people who know for a fact that Bigfoot exists, and they get treated like they're idiots or just absolutely ridiculous, or, you know, scaredy cats or whatever. And that's just not fair. Same goes for people that have claimed alien abduction and seeing UFOs. They get ridiculed and treated very poorly as well. And that's why it's so important to me now to find those connections and help pull this together for everybody as a community, because we need to know that this is real so that all those people can get the support that people like I never got, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very, very important thing and a good thing for us to do for humanity, is to help those people out, because some people have experienced some really horrendous things that it's so taboo to talk about. They can't even come forward and tell their closest people that they've experienced this. And that's really sad to me. That is really, really sad.
I feel like that's one of the things that I try and do here is I want to give everyone the chance to come on here and talk about things that they normally couldn't talk about, because normal society has that stigma to where if you talk about these taboo type subjects, people are going to look at you like you're weird and crazy. That's why I never talked about what happened to me for 15 years.
Right.
And at some point, it's beneficial, I think, for people to actually be able to talk about something, especially if it's bothered them for so long. Like, I know for a fact, like, I say it didn't bother me, but the fact that I knew I saw something weird, I never talked about it, and I ended up doing a podcast to talk to people about it. Like, clearly it had some sort of an impact on me. I don't say it's like traumatic, but it's like, it set me on this trajectory or the path or whatever you want to call it of what I'm doing now. And I'm trying to just give people a place to come on and talk about things, because you can't normally just go up to work one day and be like, hey man, saw some weird shit last night.
Right.
Like, they're going to look at you like you're Go tell the boss.
This dude's done lost his nuts. Yeah, he's off his rocker.
We think we need to tell Joe over here needs to go take one of them pee tests because he's talking some crazy stuff.
Yeah, or send him to therapy or something. Yeah. And yeah, with me being a spiritual counselor, you know, I've always tried to help people to heal from their childhood traumas or whatever, you know, these issues are that they have in their life, so that they can have healthier relationships and a better relationship with their self and understand clear boundaries. And it hit me one day, you know, the UFO community, the Bigfoot community, they could all use somebody like that in their corner to help them heal and integrate what they have experienced into their life and accept it, because it's no different than when I say, okay, like you've got a childhood trauma. Well, what if I told you that you actually agreed on some level through some type of contract or something before you came here to this life that you would take on this, this, and this so that your soul could grow from it, or your soul could contribute to society in this direction, or whatever that may be for you, right? So what if we actually on some level agreed to experience this? And so that, when people kind of look at it that way, it's a little easier to see it from a new perspective, to heal from it and release it, right? No different than if you've got an alien experience or a Bigfoot experience, that was something that was clearly meant for you to experience, for you to be the person that you now are, like you with your werewolf. And, here you are doing podcasts and helping people now. That was clearly something that was on your path for a reason, right? Like we all have these things, and it's just about being able to see it from a new perspective so that we're not feeling traumatized, or we don't feel victimized, and we can take our power back and wholly embrace who we are and what we've been through, walk proudly in that. And so I commend you for what you do. Because normally I'm not the one telling my story. I'm letting other people tell theirs, right? I commend you for what you're doing. I think we need more people like you and me in the world.
Yeah. When I started this, my whole idea wasn't to do what I'm doing now, to be honest. Like, my original idea was developed back in 2020 when the world was kind of shut down for a while. And
yeah. Also was meant to be.
Yeah. I was talking about a lot of weird things that were going on. We had a lot of different ideas. I was kicking around. I was like, you know what? I want to make a podcast. I want to talk about all the strange things that's going on in the world. I want to talk about things that have happened before. Like, I want to talk about like a lot of conspiracies and a lot of the weird stuff, like with UFOs. And
That's
I made
how I
it.
started.
I said Tinfoil Tales. Like, obviously, if you're a tinfoil person, like, you wear a tinfoil hat because you're a conspiracy theorist, and we're going to talk about conspiracies and the stories behind these conspiracies. So I come up with Tinfoil Tales. Sound like a great roll off the tongue name.
I love it. I love it. I love your name.
I sat on it for like 2 years and I didn't do anything with it. And then I finally said, well, this isn't going to pan out the way I thought. I'm just going to start interviewing people. And I had that experience back in 2007. I was like, you know what? Maybe I can talk to other people. And that's just kind of where I went from there, just because the original idea was, again, not so much to interview people. It was more or less for me and a friend to talk about a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just got the urge to talk to other people, because I was like, maybe talking to other people will help me understand what I've went through, and I'm able to help other people so they don't feel like I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right. When we talk to each other, we connect dots, because right off the bat, as soon as we started talking, we were already connecting dots.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to open that dialogue so that we can all understand, because none of us have it all figured out. I don't feel like there's a true expert in any of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all just like learning as we go.
I've literally said that too. It's like, if anyone comes around and says they're an expert in this type of field, they're full of crap, because there is no experts when it comes to things that you can't even prove exist.
Right. Yeah, they're full of something, probably ego,
Yeah.
to think they're an expert. And
I
think it's.
As I have my own opinions on things, and I'll just leave it at that. Like, when it comes to different podcasts, it comes to different experts, it comes to these self-described, like, know-it-all people. I'm like, whatever, you guys bang on your chest all you want, and people eat it up. But I'm just here to do my thing, keep my head down.
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm with you there. No point in throwing shade at anybody.
No. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? We've been going on for about an hour. That's where I usually try and keep the episodes too. So I didn't know if there's anything you want to touch base on before we wrap this up.
No, I think we're good here. We can leave it here. But I would like to share with you sometime my experience with the reptilian.
I mean, I've got time if you want to talk about it.
Well, it's kind of a long story, so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have you back on again to talk about that one on a future episode.
Okay, that would be cool.
Yeah. It's
All right.
I'm always going to be needing to talk about things here for give people a place to talk. So like I said, I've booked out for a while, but maybe later on this summer I can reach back out because I've got a couple other people I'm supposed to have back on the show again here soon too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no,
We'll work our schedules out and get back together and do this again. This was fun.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on here. You want to let everyone know again where your YouTube channel, what it's called, and where they can find you at?
Okay, so my YouTube channel is called Deja Brew at Beacon News 777. And actually, it's like Deja Brew, paranormal research, blah, blah, blah. But if you just put in the at Beacon News 777, you'll find me. My website is earthsonglovecraft.com. And I offer all kinds of services there. And I even have financial aid for people who are on lower incomes so that nobody gets left behind, because I'm in the business of healing souls. Releasing souls and freeing souls. That's my gig. I want us all to be truly free and truly happy, and I just happen to have that piece of the puzzle to share with people. So I'm glad to do it. And
say whatever links you have or anything like that, you can send to me, and then I will include all that in my show notes. I say that in a lot of my episodes, and people go to the show notes and there's no links in there. That's because no one ever sends me the links.
Right. Well, I will send you my links.
Yeah. And so it's not that I'm not trying to help people out or put them in there. It's just like I'd say, hey, send me that stuff. Oh, we'll get it to you. And they never do. And then the episode comes out. I'm like, I tried. I offered.
Right. No, I got you. And a lot of people, on their defense, if they're not networking and busy, the way we are all the time, maybe they just don't even think to do that or don't know how to do that,
Mm-hmm.
So, it might be a little complicated for them.
Yeah. I'd say it's been a pleasure tonight. Definitely enjoyed talking with you, and I'll make sure to get back with you here in a couple months and try and get you back on here sometime later this summer so we can chat some more.
I would love it. And maybe you would like for me to interview you and you can be on my show sometime.
Yeah. Sounds great.
All right.
I can let you know about some of the weird things I've got going on here.
I would love to hear some of your stories.
Yeah. All right. Well, you take care.
Thank you. You too. It was a pleasure being on.
Mm-hmm.
Good night.
And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptid creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, Dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. But oh, before gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. to keep us blind, but I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history